Huh? Just wait. I mean, should I wait? Or what should I do? Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome back to our Founder Acharya series. Today's the last lesson of the Sambandha section where we're deepening our relationship with Srila Prabhupada. And the lesson is called, as you can see, Our Srila Prabhupada. So we have two mics. Okay, one for the ladies and one for the gents. So why don't you let Nandi read the slide? Here, just give her the mic. But you got glasses on. Okay. All right. So we'll let you off the hook. All right. Acharya Prabhu is going to read this first slide.
Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya, lesson 3, our Srila Prabhupada.
Right. Now, can these mysteries, they're going to be pounding during the, or close the door, yeah. There we go. Oh. Oops. Okay, where's the gents mic? Shivan, you want to read the slide? Here, there you go.
Oh. On May 11th, 1969, the American counterculture poet Allen Ginsberg met Srila Prabhupada at the Hare Krishna Temple in Columbus, Ohio, to discuss their program at the university for the following evening, as well as how Krishna consciousness could spread widely in the materialistic America. Referring to a prophetic text from the Brahma Vairata Purana, Prabhupada assured the poet that people everywhere will take advantage of Hare Krishna in the next 10,000 years.
Okay, mobiles off, seatbelts on, tray tables in their upright position. Everybody say in the airplane. Yeah, just please put your mobile off. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Pushpaman, did you finish reading the?
Yes.
Why don't you read the last sentence? Referring to a prophetic text.
Referring to a prophetic text from the Brahma Vairata Purana, Prabhupada assured the poet that people everywhere will take advantage of Hare Krishna for the next 10,000 years.
Ginsberg had seen Prabhupada rouse crowds to chant Hare Krishna in New York and San Francisco, but the conservative students at the Ohio State University would present a special challenge. Has anybody been to America here? Okay. Did you ever go to Ohio? I did. Did you go to Columbus? Okay, so Columbus prides itself on being the all-American city. And it's kind of a conservative place, even though it's a college town. Too old? Old. Oh, you were there in the winter. Yeah. Yeah, well, it's hot in the summer, too. Okay. So Prabhupada, it's one thing to get people to chant Hare Krishna on the coasts, like San Francisco and New York, where it's a little more freewheeling and wide open. But, Prabhupada was in Columbus, Ohio, at the Ohio State University. So Ginsberg was thinking, wow, what are we going to do here? In his book, The Hare Krishna Explosion, Hayagriva Prabhu describes what happened on the night of the event. After entering the auditorium, Prabhupada, smiling and glowing, ascended the stage where poet Ginsberg invited him to lead the chanting. Prabhupada started slowly, singing a simple melody, and gradually picked up the tempo while playing hand cymbals. Then, and this is directly from Hayagriva's book, he describes what happened. Prabhupada stands and raises his hands, inviting the students also to stand and dance. The response is immediate, even though, the students were kind of conservative, even though it was the late 60s and what have you. They were wearing shirts, white shirts and ties sometimes to their feet. Then students in the rows and balconies arise. There is little room for dancing. It's like in Mayapur at Gaurapanim, you ever try to move in the temple room? It's like packed, you can't even move. It's like if you can hardly even take a deep breath because you're so... Right? So that's how, as he waves his arms, they wave theirs. He leads them as a maestro conducts an orchestra until gradually the inherent spiritual rhythm of the mantra itself prevails. The young voices, empowered by the mantra, not even knowing the meaning of the words. They didn't know Hare Krishna in the interior. As Ginsberg later reflected, quote, "The amazing fact is that everybody was able to get up and dance, nearly leaping out of their skins." Unquote. Before the event, had Prabhupada cited the relevant Puranic verses directly preceding the 10,000-year prophecy he mentioned, remember he had told Ginsberg, Hare Krishna is going to go on for 10,000 years. Poet Ginsberg may have proclaimed Prabhupada their fulfiller. Okay, ladies, got the mic?
Predicted our founder Acharya's report.
Okay.
After 5,000 years, the Manapa Upasaka, worshipper of the Holy Name, will appear in this world as fake chanting of my holy name everywhere.
And that's Krishna to Ganga Devi. So this is actually a reference. The context is that Ganga Devi and the holy rivers knew that Krishna was about to leave the planet. So the holy rivers went to Ganga and said, "Okay, Ganga, you got to approach Krishna and tell him our concerns. That as soon as Kali Yuga, as soon as you leave Krishna, Kali Yuga is going to come in full force, and the people who are coming are going to be so sinful, the Kali Yuga people, and we're going to dump all their sinful reactions in our water, in our sacred waters." So Krishna is saying, "Don't worry. After 5,000 years, I'm going to send my mantra upasak, my worshipper of the holy name, and he'll spread it everywhere." There's other predictions too, but I just picked one. So, while fulfilling this and by the way, the picture there's Prabhupada. Any bar, of course, I think Nandi and Pushpavan know where he is, but anybody else know where Prabhupada is there?
Tompkins Square Park.
Yeah, it's either Tompkins Square or Washington Square Park. I'm not sure where it is there. And there are two budding devotees. The one on the left with his arms up, that was Chuck Barnett. He became a Chutananda Shami. And the one on the right is Brahmananda. Bruce Scharf became Brahmananda Das. And Prabhupada, what is Prabhupada playing? You have the mic. Do you want to tell us what he's playing?
A little one-headed drum, like it's called in America a bongo.
Bongo. There were no mridangas. Prabhupada didn't come on the ship with a mridanga. There were no mridangas. But then somebody gave the temple a bongo. And especially the Latinos, they're good at bongo drums. And so, but Prabhupada was such an expert, with mridanga and any kind of drum, that he was playing, just with one hand. He was holding it, and then he was playing with one hand, and he was playing it so skillfully, that the jazz musicians from what was called Greenwich Village, the East Village, where near 26th Avenue, they would come over to the park just to hear the Swami. The Swami gets in some good licks, hits on the drum. They wanted to hear how he played because he was playing it so amazingly. So while fulfilling this and other Vedic prophecies, Prabhupada never once called attention to himself, instead calling everyone's attention to Krishna. He didn't call it the Bhaktivedanta movement, he called it the Hare Krishna movement, right? Over the millennia, the Lord would set the stage of world history to send his, quote, worshipper of the holy names to just the right place at just the right time to launch the worldwide Hare Krishna movement alone. There's Prabhupada. I'm going to call the next section Alone in America. Of course, he's not alone in that picture because somebody took the picture, but that gives you an idea of him alone. When Prabhupada's spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, dispatched the first Vaishnava preachers from India to Europe in the 1930s, he gave them the full institutional support of the Gaudiya mission. But after Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's demise in 1937, it was actually January 1st, 1937, 5:30 a.m., the mission's leaders neglected their master's instructions to form a governing body and work cooperatively to spread Krishna consciousness. The infighting that ensued so fragmented the mission that by the time Prabhupada arrived in America to preach in 1965, almost 30 years later, there was no institution left to support him. In New York City, with almost no friends or funds, Prabhupada nonetheless saw a fertile preaching field in materially prosperous America, where people were spiritually starving and looking to the East for truth. Well, our generation, Prabhupada disciple generation, we were looking to the East. We were reading books like Journey to the East, Hermann Hesse, Siddhartha. We were following the Beatles, who themselves were looking to the East, following George's lead. And they finally went to India in 67, and they went to Rishikesh and Haridwar. So everybody's getting into gurus, and so this is all an arrangement of Krishna looking to the East for truth. Okay, so, okay.
Alone in America, Srila Prabhupada aimed to revive Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's Gaudiya mission.
Yeah, Prabhupada, when he came over on the ship, the furthest thing from his mind was starting anything new. He just wanted to revive the Gaudiya mission. Hopeful of reviving the cooperative spirit that had once galvanized the Gaudiya mission, Prabhupada began writing his now isolated God Brothers. So this is 30 years later. I mean, they had fought in the courts. It was a disgrace. One of the disciples sold the big Mridanga, the Brihat Mridanga, the press, to cover court costs. I mean, it was so much aparad. So Prabhupada, he's there, and there's the Bhaktivedanta database. If you get it, there's a section called letters, ISKCON letters, 1960. And Prabhupada's writing a lot of God brothers. So I'm going to show you an excerpt from one of the letters, which is very telling of how, what Prabhupada's mood was. Prabhupada began writing his now isolated God brothers, appealing to them to help him seize the time. Because Prabhupada saw that, Americans are, they're really looking to the East. They can see that they're not getting the right answers, philosophical, religious, institutional. They're not satisfied. So, and then Prabhupada, he noticed that, the Ramakrishna mission was in America, and they kind of reimagined themselves as the Vedanta Society. So, and they had a big skyscraper in New York. They had a big building. So Prabhupada is writing a form, the following excerpt from one such letter that Prabhupada wrote to the mission's former manager is telling, and this is November 8th, 1965. It's kind of a long letter. I'm just going to show you the most salient excerpt. So Pushpavan's going to read this.
I have come to study the situation, and I find it very nice. And if you are also agreeable. And if you are also agreeable to cooperate, it will be all very nice by the will of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. If you agree to take it for granted that I am one of the workers of Sri Mayapur Chaitanya Mat, I have no ambition for becoming the proprietor of any mat or mandir, but I want working facilities.
And that's a letter to Bhaktivilas Tirtha Maharaj. So, Sri Chaitanya Mat in Mayapur, he had declared himself the inheritor of the Gaudiya mission. But, the whole thing was fragmented. It's like he was declaring himself a king, but he didn't have any subjects. But Prabhupada remembered that Kunja Babu, who was Kunja Bihari, Kunja Babu, in the time of the Gaudiya Mat, was such a good manager. He actually came from the Ramakrishna mission himself, but he'd been persuaded to join the Gaudiya mission. And he was an excellent fundraiser. He knew he had connections in government. Prabhupada knew he had connections in government and business. So in other parts of the letter, Prabhupada's saying, you have those Calcutta Malwaris, these crore-patis, these rich people, in the palm of your hand. You know how to inspire these rich people to give. And I know you also have the connections in Delhi, at the government house in Delhi, to let those rupees get released to the West, because India was, especially back then, it was more poor, so they didn't want the money leaving the country. But Prabhupada knew that he had the connections to do that. And when he mentioned, how the Vedanta Society's here, and they have $1 million skyscraper. We need $1 million skyscraper too. To give these naive Americans who don't know anything about Vedic philosophy or culture, and they're so gullible, they're just swallowing this Advaita stuff, this Mayavad stuff. But we need to give them the real thing. And look at Prabhupada's mood in that excerpt. If you agree to help, then take it for granted that I am one of the workers. I am your servant. You can be in charge. I am one of the workers of the Sri Mayapur Chaitanya Math. I don't want to be, I'm not the big guy, because he knew Bhaktivilas Tirtha liked to be the big guy. He liked to be recognized as the big guy, right? So you can be in charge. But he says, I have no ambition for becoming a proprietor of any math or mandir, but I want working facilities. I need the funds. Look, I can recruit people. I know there's a good field here. He didn't have any followers yet, but he could tell that Americans that there was an appetite for Krishna consciousness. So I can recruit, I can organize, I can recruit people. So what do you say? So Prabhupada wrote this letter, and then Tirtha Maharaj, he wrote back, and he kind of hinted that maybe he could help. But then Prabhupada was always like, oh, there's little interest there. He's trying to feign it. He wrote him back, and then he never heard from him. And there was another Prabhupada written, I forget his godbrother's name. Anyway, so the godbrother didn't answer, but a disciple of his godbrother named Brahmachari wrote and said, I would like to come and join you, Maharaj, in New York. But Guru Maharaj said I shouldn't, because he says, he
said it's ludicrous.
Yes, ludicrous. Yeah, so the disciple said, Guru Maharaj said that if your program in America is not authorized, it is certainly ludicrous. So Prabhupada, he just couldn't believe it. So he wrote Lord Brahmachari back and said, ludicrous? This is not my personal business. Guru Maharaj wanted us all to cooperate to spread Krishna consciousness, especially in the English-speaking countries, because those are the ones that are people are looked to, that follow, like America and Canada, New Zealand, Australia, England. They're the most materially developed, so people are looking to them. This is not my personal project. Would you please tell him that? But anyway, nothing ever came of it, and that was kind of like the last straw. Lord Chaitanya showed Prabhupada that they're not going to help you. They can't help you. Too much bad blood had gone, too much water under the bridge, too much bitter experience, fighting, and now they're all just alone in their mutts. They're older, they're a kind of old man, and they can't do anything. So that's when Prabhupada realized what Lord Chaitanya and his Guru Maharaj were showing him. You've got to start something new, fresh. You've got to start a fresh branch of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. A servant leader, long before the phrase's time, Prabhupada would still receive no tangible cooperation from his godbrothers. With only the scriptures he translated, annotated, and brought from India to sustain him, Prabhupada endured, mostly alone, the brutal New York winter that followed, writing letters and translating the Bhagavad Gita. This Ramamurti Mishra, Dr. Mishra, gave Prabhupada a room he had rented, had no windows, but at least he let him use it as a kind of place where he could peacefully translate. Yeah, Prabhupada had never seen snow, because he was from Kolkata, right here. You guys don't have any snow, right? No. So one morning he woke up, and this was later when he did have his own apartment, and so he's, what's going on? Okay. So one morning Prabhupada said, so I woke up and I looked out the window and I thought somebody had whitewashed the building next door. It was snow. He'd never seen snow. And you see Prabhupada, those pictures, he's walking alone through the snow with a Swami hat and white pointed shoes. Luckily somebody gave him an overcoat. Okay, and he was translating the Gita. Okay, so he was obscure from, say, September 65 until, July 66, really. So we go from obscurity to Swamiji. That's the next section. Famous picture, Prabhupada. If you ever go to, who's been to America? Oh, you've been to America. Did you go to New York? Did you go to the tree? Look at the tree, famous tree. It's New York City. It's Tompkins Square Park. Okay, well, if you ever go again, this is a holy place. This is where Prabhupada started his outdoor preaching. And it's still there. The tree's there. It's taller. And the landscape behind it is different. Yeah. So that's like the fall of 66. Prabhupada took the preaching out of that 26 Second Avenue storefront and started preaching to the people in the park. Okay, so from obscurity to Swamiji. The following spring, so we're looking at spring 66, Prabhupada relocated to a loft in New York's infamous Bowery district. So back then, now it's changed, it's upscaled. Bowery district, and it was where all the, a lot of crime and a lot of people doing drugs, and it was just a mess. Rife with derelicts and crime, the district was dangerous, but Prabhupada took the risk to reach young seekers nearby. What happened was Prabhupada was up, Dr. Mishra would let Prabhupada come to his place on the Upper West Side, where a lot of wealthy people were supporting him. So he had a nice place in the Upper West Side, and he was an impersonalist. So Prabhupada would come, but it was a little bit of tension between them because Prabhupada was, impersonalist, and Mishra was an impersonalist. So Mishra was afraid that if Prabhupada spoke, he would take all his followers because Prabhupada was so potent. Yeah. So anyway, at Mishra's place, there was one listener. I think it was Wali Sheffi, who became Rumapati. Said, no, it wasn't Wali Sheffi. I think it was Harvey Cohen, who became the first Haridas. So he said to Swamiji, he said, Swamiji, I can see you're a preacher, and you got a mission here. So if you really want to get interest people, the Lower East Side in New York is where it's happening. That's where all the, the poets and the seekers are, the people experimenting with, psychoactive substances and stuff. So you go down there, and it's not as nice as here materially, but you're going to get a lot of interest down there. So Prabhupada, all right. So then, it was Harvey Cohen, because then Harvey said, I have an AIR, an artist in residence loft in the Bowery, and I'll let you use it. Now, the only thing is that it's a big loft, and a young person who was a seeker and a hallucinogenic experimenter, he's there, and I don't know how he is, but the other half you can use. So Prabhupada said, okay. So Prabhupada is willing to go anywhere where he thinks there might be some interest. In the loft, Krishna sent Prabhupada a few regular listeners. That's where you get the first recordings. Anybody remember? What's the first recording we have of Prabhupada speaking? Anybody know? Who said? Yeah. Who said that? You. Okay. Yeah. February 19th, 1966. Prabhupada's in the Bowery loft. And the first thing you hear, it's like, wow, Prabhupada. He starts Mangalacharana. He's, that's how, if you look at the introduction of the Gita, that's how it starts with the Mangalacharana. And then he writes this beautiful, 30-page overview of the Gita. So, and then there's other tapes too. Again, if you have the database, you can hear the audio. And Prabhupada's getting these first listeners in the Bowery. Okay, so in the loft, Krishna sent Prabhupada a few regular listeners, including somebody who's still in ISKCON, who's a sannyasi. Mukunda Maharaj, Michael. He's from Oregon, and he was a great musician and piano player, and he was trying to make it in the jazz music scene as a jazz pianist. So he was also searching, right? So he went up to the loft. He couldn't believe it. To get into 94 Bowery, Michael had to step over these, it's not politically correct now in America, but bums, winos who were just totally, crashed out, who had just drunk themselves to sleep. And when he walked in the foyer to 94 Bowery, and, it smelled like cheap wine and urine. That's what Prabhupada had to walk in and out of when he would, go to the West End Superette. And then he had to walk up some flights of stairs. And finally, Michael comes into this loft, and he hears, he turns left, he turns to the correct side. And then he looks in, and there are these people who are just kind of like catatonic, they're kind of like, and there's no Swamiji, there's nobody there, but all these people are kind of like in different stages of dysfunctionality. And then he sees another curtain, and he thinks that maybe Swamiji's there, and he peeks, and there, sure enough, there's Swami Bhaktivedanta. And so Michael says, Swami Bhaktivedanta? Because Prabhupada was advertising. That's how he knew where to go. And Prabhupada said, yes. There's somebody who's conscious and alert, and he can talk to him. And the first thing Michael says is, what are those people doing out there? And Prabhupada said, I don't know. And I don't think they know either. But you have some interest? And so Michael says, I think so. So he said he just started asking Swamiji all these questions. And you can see Swamiji is a very erudite person. He's a very learned person, very cultured person. But he's in this flop house, this place. And so he was struck with wonder that such a person was there. And then he said, I just finally ran out of questions. But I could see Swamiji, he was willing to talk to me as long as I wanted to talk. So he said, so Mr. Michael, so you can come again? Yes. So he started hearing Prabhupada. Yeah. So in the loft, Krishna sent Prabhupada a few regular listeners who came to his aid after his young LSD-crazed loft mate, attacked him. In the Lavata, we called him David Allen. His name wasn't David Allen. It was, I forget. There was a couple of people who didn't let us use their name.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because they were afraid, because this was years later, and in David Allen's case, I forget what his name, Mr. Paul, I think it was Paul, yeah. He was from a very wealthy family in Fairfield County, Connecticut, where I grew up, just up Long Island Sound. And he would come in on the weekends, and he'd be a weekend hippie. So, he was doing, I don't know, maybe he was in school or doing something, but he didn't want anybody to know that he was doing that. So he'd come and he'd just sort of be a weekend hippie, and he'd experiment with LSD and stuff, and hang out with the people in Greenwich Village, in the East Village. So by the time we were doing interviews for the Lilamrita, I was part of the team to help Satsur Maharaj compile the Lilamrita. There was a few people who wouldn't let us use their name. So there was years later, he didn't want anybody to know that he'd ever done that, taken LSD or been in that kind of, lived in that kind of a situation, because he was too proud of his, whatever, his birth or his aristocratic parent, I don't know, something.
Oh, so it's a different name, no?
There was a few people. Mr. Payne, who cheated them out of $5,000, we changed his name to Mr. Price. And there's a couple of more, I forget.
That note can be added.
I don't know if that's. Yeah, maybe I don't think so. Yeah. We just, to keep the peace, we didn't want any legal ramifications. All right. So anyway, what happened was, so a few regular listeners. So it wasn't only Michael. Michael knew a lot of these jazz musicians. So there was a guy named James Green, and I forget, there was another guy too. And he got them to come to the loft. So one fine day, David Allen, we'll call him, had a bad trip. He took LSD, and you can have good trips or bad trips, depending on your karma. And so he had a bad trip. And on his bad trip, he attacked Prabhupada. He attacked Swamiji. And Prabhupada had to run for his life. Down the stairs and out the door and into a phone booth, and he called Michael. And he said, Michael, this isn't working. I've been attacked. And while his stuff was still upstairs, I've been attacked. You have to help me get my own place. Finally, I have to get my own place. So Michael said, okay, Swamiji, and don't worry, we'll get your stuff. We'll come out, we'll come and get it. And so the first place Prabhupada lived was, Carl Jurgens, who became Karlapati. He was living, can you imagine? I can't imagine Prabhupada's godbrother doing this. He lived with Carl Jurgens and his girlfriend, Eva, in their crash pad, in the East Village. And Eva had a cat, and Prabhupada had to put his own boga, they weren't even vegetarian, his own boga in the fridge next to the cat food. So Prabhupada was saying later, he said, so this is like completely, beyond the pale. A sannyasi can't do that. But what was I to do? On the plea of keeping my rules and regulations, I was going to stop my mission? No. Prabhupada was willing to do practically anything to keep going, right? So he lived with Carl Jurgens, and then that didn't work because Eva, Carl's girlfriend, was afraid that Swamiji was stealing her man, and she became aware of the regulative principles. She didn't want no illicit sex, So Swamiji had. So what finally Michael did was he found this place, 26 2nd Avenue. Yeah. With the regulars' help, Prabhupada at last secured his own place, a cheap storefront on the city's Lower East Side. It was still just a hole in the wall on the Lower East Side. And that was where he preached, and then he got the apartment. Mr. Gardner, the landlord, said, I have an apartment too. So then Prabhupada, negotiated with him. Oh, you have an apartment. Well, then you have to give me a good price. I'm getting 2 places. You have to give me a good price on the storefront and the apartment. So he got the whole thing for $200 a month. $200 a month in New York City, right? Yeah. So Forced by the non-cooperation of his godbrothers, Prabhupada dropped the attempt to revive his spiritual master's institution and instead, at 26 Second Avenue, on July 13, 1966, he officially launched, quote, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. International. It was just a storefront in New York City. A brand new branch of the same Gaudiya Sampradaya. All right, so what lady's going to read that one? Or is it whose turn? Okay.
Empowered by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his spiritual forefathers, Prabhupada inspired a growing flock of followers that summer to chant Hare Krishna and take up the process of Bhakti Yoga. No small miracle in 1960s in New York City, in capital of Do Your Own Thing.
Do your own thing. Don't let anybody mess with your mind. He did it. Now, how did Prabhupada do that? He inspired these hippies. He did it by stressing the do's more than the don'ts. The chanting more than the taboos. And basically, if you hear those early tapes, he was speaking some simple philosophy from the Gita, and he was holding these long kirtans. And he knew that they were, and why were they there? Because they wanted to stay high forever. They wanted to get high by following this Swami and chanting. That was a new way to get high. That was their motive. He had faith that as Krishna filled the consciousness of his young aspirants, they would outgrow their old ways and savor the higher taste of devotional service. After 6 weeks, one of the people in the storefront, it was Howard, who became Hayagriva. Howard said, Swamiji, I've been chanting Hare Krishna for 6 weeks, and I still haven't seen the universal form. So, Prabhupada knew just how to answer anybody. So he would say, so Prabhupada said, that's all right, you keep chanting. Just keep chanting, it will go away, this desire to see the universal form. Right. So, by stressing the do's more than the don'ts, do chant Hare Krishna. He said the 4 rules, but he didn't stress them, because he knew that was a little much for these intoxicated hippies. So it worked. By late November, let's see. Okay. Want to read? Go ahead.
By late November, after a few groups of devotees had received initiation, one of the earlier initiates approached Srila Prabhupada. Swamiji, what did you say? The rules are for this practice?
So they were getting purified. They wanted to know more. And they remembered something about rules. They'd already been initiated. But Prabhupada didn't stress those rules. What did you say the rules are for this club? This society. So Prabhupada's response was, very good, boy, very good. I thought you'd never ask, right? Prabhupada knew it had to come from us. It had to come from he couldn't impose it on it, anything on them. So, keep reading, Prabhu.
Just what Prabhupada had been waiting to hear, for he knew they would follow the rules only when they were ready. The next day, November 25, 1966, Prabhupada posted the regulative principle of Krishna consciousness on his apartment's bathroom door.
Why did he post it on his bathroom door in his apartment? You know why? Because that's where all the hippies were taking a shower. In Swamiji's apartment. Prabhupada was so tolerant, they'd come, unwashed, and So they would use the toilet and the shower, and Prabhupada sometimes had to stand in line behind them to use his own toilet. I mean, they had it was like unconscious. So here's famously, you've probably seen this in Mayapur, behind Prabhupada's Vyasasana and Chandrodaya Mandir, and where the Maharajas make the garlands. You see this. So there it is. Oh, you can't even. Can I? Yeah. There we go. Right. So can you read?
No.
You can't. All right. Well, I can sort of make it out. So all initiated devotees, the first thing it says is must avoid all kinds of intoxicating habit. Is that what it says? Oh, must avoid. Anyway, all kinds of intoxicating habit. Must not mix intimately with non-devotees. We can preach to non-devotees, but don't, because he knew if you just go back to your old friends, you're going to just fall down. No unnecessarily sporting. We all need to stay fit, but don't overdo it. No illicit sexual connection. And then Howard, what did Howard say? No, he was Hayagriva by then. And so when they all read the rules, they said, what? So Hayagriva goes, only once a month for sex? So Prabhupada just sort of tipped his head. And so then, so Hayagriva goes, then what's the use? I might as well just give up the whole thing. Very good boy. You got the right idea. It reads like a mini Hari Bhakti Vilas for the Lower East Side. So anyway, this is how Prabhupada did it. Yeah. Okay, from obscurity to Swamiji, and then we're going to go to what I call only he could lead them. So, there's Prabhupada. He's in San Francisco on Hippie Hill in Golden Gate Park. Now there's a drum. Ryan Maharaj was a disciple of Prabhupada's sannyas guru Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj, had finally come through with a mridanga. So as soon as they got it, Mukunda wanted to learn how to play it, so right on the spot, Prabhupada gave him a lesson. So there he is on Hippie Hill, 1967, San Francisco. Let's see. Yeah, so whose turn? Ladies?
In January 1967, Prabhupada followed the counter-telephone train to San Francisco, where the disciples had opened the Spring City Temple. Then he inspired a new way of devotees to chant Hare Krishna and serve Lord Chaitanya's mission. As in New York, the eight parents modeled at Prabhupada's pace. A bold way of chanting, teaching, worshipping, cooking, public preaching, private speaking, initiating newcomers, and translating scripture during the wee hours while everyone else slept.
Well, everyone else slept. That's the only time you can get any peace. Because everybody's so needy and wild, and especially in the West Coast, it was like a wild. And that's when the first servant came in, because they put Prabhupada up, the temple was at 518 Willard Street, another storefront, and then put Prabhupada up the street. Mukunda and Janaki were living in another apartment in the same floor. And one night, and Prabhupada didn't lock his doors. One night, he heard a knock in the middle of the night, and it was somebody who had heard him during the day, a hippie, and it was a girl. And so he opened the door and he said, yes. And this girl goes, Maha, Una. She must have been tripping, must have been high. And so Prabhupada saw that she was completely out of it, so he stepped outside, and she ran in and locked the door. Locked Prabhupada out. So finally, I think Janaki came and convinced the girl, through the door to open the door. And that's when Prabhupada said, okay, I have to have somebody, with me, to protect, because it was too wild, it was too crazy. That's where the personal servants came in. I think it was Upendra became his servant. Right? So Prabhupada started the whole scene there, and it's just, again, he was inspiring so many people. When Prabhupada returned to New York in April, despite his 70-plus years, the pace continued unabated. For his first followers, this was all part of the wonder that was Swamiji. So it was quite a shock when, toward the end of May, Prabhupada suffered a heart attack and a stroke. He was their absolute shelter. Now they would have to take care of him. To help Prabhupada recuperate, the devotees brought him to a beach bungalow on the Jersey Shore, popular place below New York City. But the weather was gray and blustery, so with the doctor's permission, Prabhupada flew back to San Francisco, where the devotees hoped the California sunshine would heal him. But to no avail. The mountains and fog near his cottage mostly obscured the sun's rays, so Prabhupada said he would have to return to India for its Ayurvedic medicines, massage, and bracing heat. Hayagriva explains what happened next. So this is another excerpt from the Hare Krishna explosion. Who's got the mic? Okay. So, oh, that's not it. I'm just too early. All right. Some of the devotees worried. I'm just curious. Okay. Some of the devotees worried that Swamiji has decided to go to India. Oh yeah, okay, this is from the book. To leave his body, ask him whether during his absence one of his godbrothers should come to America to assume ISKCON leadership. They were afraid if Swamiji goes back to India, we'll never see him again. He's just going to pass away, and then, so they're so neophyte, they're thinking, what about us? They're not thinking about him. What about us? Should we get somebody, one of your godbrothers? The minute this question is presented to him, we sense that it is offensive. Swamiji becomes very grave, closing his eyes. Then suddenly we see tears falling down his cheeks. Okay, Prabhu, now you read.
Now Guru Maharaj, he was no ordinary spiritual master, he says, wiping away the tears. He saved me. Later, Swamiji tells us what we should have also known.
Always known.
There is no one to replace him. The very idea is insulting. If someone comes and tells you something different, he says, you will be confused.
Owing to his absolute surrender to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Lord Chaitanya's mission, Prabhupada knew he was being uniquely empowered to turn people outside India's spiritual culture toward Krishna consciousness, and that only he could lead them. Right. So obscurity, Swamiji, only he, and now we're going to hear how Swamiji became Prabhupada. It's almost comical how this happened, but it was Krishna's way. Actually, there's Prabhupada. That slide doesn't match the time, but this is Prabhupada's quarters in New Mayapur in France. Very nice. Just like in Radha Govinda Mandir, we were there yesterday, and they've got Prabhupada's room, so nice. So also in places around the world, they have, Prabhupada has some very nice quarters maintained nicely in the heart of France. Although Prabhupada's uniqueness among contemporary gurus was obvious to his followers, they were still calling him Swamiji, a rather common address. In the spring of 1968, Krishna revealed a title more befitting Prabhupada's position. When a devotee learned that the Sanskrit suffix ji was a term of endearment, like we say Prabhuji, right? Prabhuji, Mataji, it's a term of endearment, He asked Prabhupada if he could add it to his wife's name, Govinda, and call her Govindaji. This was my godbrother Gaurasundar, and his wife was Govinda, and he's a kind of a bright guy, so he was learning a little Sanskrit, and so he's, oh, Ji is a term of endearment. Maybe I can call my wife Govindaji. So Prabhupada says, no, actually Ji is a third-class form of address. Prabhupada replied, it's better not to call her Govindaji. Now we go to the slide. Govinda Dasi told us in a memory. Govinda Dasi, a plain-spoken Texas lady, remembers the rest. So I piped up. This is Govinda talking. So I piped up. I spoke up. I was sitting right in front of him, and I said, well, if it's a third-class form of address, why are we calling you Ji? Why are we calling you Swami Ji? And he said, it's not very important. Prabhupada just tries to dismiss it. So to understand the rest of it, you have to understand the kind of relationship that Prabhupada allowed Govinda Dasi to have with him. She was the secretary, and Gaurasundar was the servant, husband-wife team. And he allowed Govinda to relate to him as like her grandfather. And even he would let her scold him sometime. So she's speaking, in this exchange you're going to hear her speaking very strongly to him. So first of all, she said, why are we calling you Swamiji? And Prabhupada, he just, he knows he can't impose any high title on us, so it's not very important. But watch how the conversation changes. So let's see. I said, this is Govinda, oh no, it's very important. She's taking the lead here. If it's a third-class form of address, then we don't want to call you that. We want to call you the most first-class form of address. Because they love Prabhupada, they love Swamiji. We want to call you the best thing. So, tell us, what would be a good name for us to call you by? Now, Prabhupada is not dismissing it. He can see that she's serious, and maybe they're ready for a better, more, to offer more respect for their spiritual master. And he was, so when she goes, and he was very humble, very reluctant, but I pressed him, we've got to change this. And he said, okay, here it is. Now, is it the lady's turn? Yeah, okay, this is good. Now, I don't know if you can, Govinda Dasi is a real straight shooter from Texas. I don't think you can do a Texas accent. There's a little bit of a drawl there, but try to be forceful. I know it's impossible. Vaishnavi from Prabhupada's hometown. But anyway, just read it.
You can call me Gurudev or Guru Maharaj or Prabhupada, Govinda Dasi. Well, that's three. We need one. So which one is the best?
That's three, we need one. Hey.
Sure, that is nice. That's the best. Govinda Dasi. From today, you will be called Srila Prabhupada.
Govinda Dasi Ji. Yeah. That's where it started. And that whole, grandfather, granddaughter exchange. And then Govinda also says on the memory, she said, so I told all the devotees. And a lot of devotees didn't like it because it's easier to say Swamiji than Prabhupada. It's kind of a tongue twister. But gradually it caught on, right? Never demanding respect, but nonetheless commanding it by his own enduring example, Prabhupada had seized Krishna's teachable moment to quietly disclose the appropriate address. And in the cyclic line, there are many Gurudevs, many Guru Maharajas, but Prabhupada is a Guru of Gurus, a master at whose feet all masters sit. Like in ISKCON today, right? We have so many Guru Maharajas, Guru Devs. But Prabhupada is the founder of Acharya. He's the Jagat Guru. Okay, and now that's Prabhupada, but there's still one more step. Founder of Acharya. They didn't know anything. What's that, you know? And that happened the month I joined in July 1970 in Boston. Prabhupada, that's the whole story, but let's see. Okay. From Prabhupada to founder Acharya. In just 12 years, Prabhupada would circle the globe 14 times, initiate thousands of disciples, and establish the Krishna consciousness movement on every major continent. During his travels, he would found over 100 temples, schools, farms, and restaurants, all while writing and publishing dozens of translations and commentaries on foundational Vaishnava scriptures. But success would also bring enemies, and the worst from within. Listen to this. In 1970, after critical remarks by a few of his godbrothers negatively influenced some of his leaders, Prabhupada asked a dozen trusted disciples to help him form a governing body commission. This is when the GBC started. As Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had requested his disciples to protect ISKCON and ensure its continuance. Because Prabhupada was always saying, I'm an old man, I could leave at any time. So he was determined that what happened to Gaudiya not happen to ISKCON. So as early as 1970, he started the GBC. On July 28th, a legal document called Direction of Management, it's right in the database, you can read it, listed the GBC members, most of them were householders at the time, and officially referred to, quote, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada as ISKCON's founder Acharya. Let's see here. Yeah, there we go. So Prabhupada, this is Prabhupada at Bhaktivedanta Manor in 1973. Prabhupada liked this picture taken by my godbrother Bhargava so much that he said, you can use this as a founder Acharya picture. So you see this a lot around. People use it. Founder Acharya. But bad signs persisted. On one of his books, his ISKCON Press identified the author as simply A.C. Bhaktivedanta, merely stripping his name of any spiritual significance. Before the BBT, there's ISKCON Press. That's where I joined. In Boston in 1970, we had a press called ISKCON Press. And it was kind of a homemade job. Like I lived in the basement with a godbrother, Petit Udaran, he was called that now, Petita Pavana, and he was the person who bound the books. You know how he bound the books? He would the way he made sure the books were going to stay bound, he would just, they were glued, the spine was glued, and then he would just stack the books one on top of each other just to set the glue. And I remember Nectar Devotion coming out like that, and we were producing the second canto in paperback chapters. So Brahmananda, who was in charge of the press, he was the temple president in New York, but he was overseeing the press. As soon as one of the chapters came out, he would take it to Prabhupada, wherever Prabhupada was in America. And he gave a chapter to Prabhupada. Prabhupada opened it up, and the spine cracked and the pages went flying. And first of all, he read the title too. A.C. Bhaktivedanta, that's all that was on the identifying of the author, of the translator and the commentator, was A.C. Bhaktivedanta. And Prabhupada was looking at it. And as if, like the offense was going to be underlined or highlighted, he opens it up and it's like, the pages go flying. It was just crazy. Later, when his new publishing house, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, moved into its headquarters out in L.A., Prabhupada saw nothing on the building identifying the organization's name or founder. And when some of his temple presidents wrote him on their own stationery, Prabhupada had to tell them to write him on official temple stationery. The temple presidents were writing him on their own stationery, and you have to have temple stationery with, on temple stationery displaying his full name and founder Acharya title. And Prabhupada is the proprietor of these temples. It's his temples. Prabhupada had and founder Acharya title. For a good reason. One day, a non-compliant temple president secretly sold the temple. It was in his name. It wasn't even in ISKCON's name. In his name. Sold the temple, collected the money, and disappeared. Whoa. He, not ISKCON, had been the legal owner. So to better protect ISKCON, in the summer of 1974, Prabhupada drafted an amendment to his earlier management document. So this is an amendment to Direction of Management, including a strongly worded statement about his position and authority as ISKCON's founder Acharya. So here's the amendment. And ladies, whose turn? Your turn? Ladies, okay. Prabhuji, okay.
It is declared that His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is the founder Acharya of ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He is the supreme authority in all matters of the society. His position cannot be occupied by anyone else, and his name and title must appear on all documents, letterheads, publications, and buildings of the society.
And now in the digital age, we can add our websites. How are we presenting Prabhupada on our websites? Is he simply some figure of the past, or is he the founder of Acharya and prominently presented? Okay, so that was an official amendment. That same summer, even as Prabhupada was reasserting his supreme position in ISKCON, while translating the Sri Chaitanya Chaitamrita, he also reasserted his and his followers' fidelity to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta in Lord Chaitanya's mission. So publicly, in an amendment to Direction of Management, he's asserting himself. But now in a purport, in the CC, you're going to hear his real internal mood of how he thinks of himself in relationship to the society. Okay, Mataji's. Who's got the mic? Okay.
As members of the Krishna consciousness movement who belong to the family or the Sattvic succession in Saraswati's family, and those who remain as Saraswatis, obeisances are therefore offered to their spiritual masters as Saraswat Deva, or a member of the Saraswat family. Nama's the Saraswati Devi, whose nations they broadcast the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gaura Panita Charan, and referred with impious harvests and voyages. Nirvishesha Shanavadi and Shanta Vishatari, Sri Chaitanya Chaitanya Prabhu, 1024.
Right. So he's telling us, or reminding us, that we're coming in it's not that Prabhupada started something, this is what bogus gurus do. They just start something and make up something, and they just use Vedic culture for their own, or wisdom for their own purposes. But Prabhupada's connecting us and himself to the whole, his Guru Maharaj and the whole disciplic succession. Okay, now the final slide in the lesson is it's an audio slide. We actually hear Prabhupada's voice and how he very dramatically in Caracas, Venezuela, his only visit to South American country in February 75, he's identifying what it means that he's the founder of Acharya. So let's see if it's not too loud. I want to. Here we go. Whoops. Oh wait, let's go back. Okay. And that was just coming from my own laptop or the screen. You ready? Okay, let's see. Wrong one?
Laptop was speakers.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Actually, we have to do the setting inside.
Oh, there's a setting inside. Oh. Well, so we got to get out of here.
Yeah.
To the setting.
Yes, the speaker here.
Oh. Speaker? Oh.
Yeah,
Is that low?
need to select speaker real time.
Speaker.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's all right now? Okay. There we go.
Try once.
Okay. Take 3. They say 3 is a charm. Let's see.
Just like he recognize the origin of his consciousness of man.
All right. I think. All right. The speakers are right here. The laptop speakers are not powerful, but we'll try. All right. Anyway, you can read it, and you got a little bit of Prabhupada's voice. Let's see. Okay. Oop.
Just like he recognize the origin of his physical consciousness of man. That means I know everything directly and immediately of all this movement. If I do not know directly and immediately everything of this movement, then I cannot become the founder Acharya. And as soon as the origin becomes known, he is left.
What Prabhupada means, the context was that he's talking about Krishna as the knower of the creation. He's conscious, he's sentient, he's not impersonal. So Prabhupada is a person, and he knows what ISKCON is, within and without, up and down. So, what's this? Yeah. So what do I say? In other words, as Krishna is the origin and knower of his creation, so Prabhupada is the origin and knower of ISKCON, as well as the life and soul of all generations of his followers. At the same time, whoever enriches our common identity, as Prabhupada Nugas, is also glorious, our Shiksha and Diksha gurus. Deepening the cooperation we need to take Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya's mission to every town and village. Boy, I really ran late today. Okay, that's the last slide, and we're going to go to the learning outcomes. We've got time for a little Q&A. Who's got the mic?
Lesson 3. How should a Prabhupada learning outcomes? By now, we should be able to identify a scriptural prophecy Srila Prabhupada fulfilled. Explain why Srila Prabhupada had to start the Hare Krishna movement in America alone. Recount how Swamiji was able to recruit young Americans to his fledgling ISKCON. Recount how Swamiji revealed to his young followers that only he could lead them. Recount how Swamiji became Srila Prabhupada. Recount how Srila Prabhupada asserted his roles as founder Acharya. Describe our and Srila Prabhupada's position in relation to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Explain how our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, is the life and soul of all generations of his followers.
Okay. Yeah, boy, previous lessons we've had more than a half hour for Q&A, but today I guess I told too many stories. That's what happens. Okay. So if you have any questions or comments, please raise your hand and we'll do what we can in the next 13 minutes. Anybody have any questions or comments? I said a lot of things that you could challenge. Oh, no questions or comments. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for this wonderful session. Prabhu, you mentioned here that when Prabhupada was, his name Swamiji becomes Srila Prabhupada, he gave an option Guru Maharaj, Gurudev and Prabhupada. So I just wanted to know that whether Prabhupada mentioned why I should keep this name Prabhupada, because the Prabhupada name was only used for Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Still this, in those who are from Gaudiya Math, they will say that why Prabhupada used that name, because what belongs to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So how Prabhupada explained this? That is.
It was explained nicely by His Holiness Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj. By 76, when Sridhar Maharaj visited in Mayapur, in Prabhupada's rooms in Mayapur, Sridhar Maharaj said, you know, Swami Maharaj, when the Guru Maharaj sent the Gaudiya Math preachers to Europe, and they didn't have much success. And even when Bhakti Saranga Maharaj was asked by, as Prabhupada would say, the Marquis of Zetland, Swamiji, can you make me a Brahmin? Famous story. And so Bhakti Saranga Maharaj said, oh yeah, that's very simple. You simply have to follow these 4 rules. No intoxication, no illicit sex, no meat eating, no gambling. So the Marquis, of course, said, impossible. So when those preachers were recalled from Europe with not much success, their impression of the Europeans was like, these people they're like animals. They can't even consider following, basic principles of spiritual life. Basic principles. What to speak of higher things. So then we thought, Sridhar Maharaj was saying to Prabhupada, also the devotees in the room, we thought that, that when Mahaprabhu said, in every town and village, my name will be sung, this must be some kind of exaggeration, somehow poetic hyperbole, some just a figure of speech. It couldn't literally be true, because these people, outside of Bharatvarsha, they're just out of control. And then he said, but Swami Maharaj, you did it. You did this. You inspired these people to follow these restraints. You gave them a higher taste. Yena tena pakalena, mano Krishna divishe. So then he said, therefore, Shaktivesh, you got the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You're fully empowered. Shakti Avesh, you're fully empowered with the potency of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to do what you did. So, when earlier, that was in 76, earlier, when Prabhupada was doing the groundbreaking for Mayapur, Prabhupada invited a lot of the God brothers to come. And you see the pictures, a lot of them came. And on the one hand, they appreciated what Swami Maharaj was doing, but they also had some complaints. And one was that he was allowing us to call him Prabhupada. And they said what you said. This is only for the likes of, a ray of Vishnu, like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, or Rupa Goswami, But why, So Prabhupada said, Brahmananda, go get a piece of my stationery. So the stationery said, in International Society for Krishna Consciousness, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, no Prabhupada, the stationery at that time. So, and then they had another complaint. They said, Swamiji, why are you allowing men and women to live in the same place? Don't you? You're violating a principle here. This is Narada Muni's preaching to Yudhisthira that a man's like butter and a lady's like fire, and then you get to put the butter too close to the fire, it's going to melt. And by then, scandals had already happened in ISKCON. And scandals were happening. And scandals would happen. But for the sake of giving everyone access to the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in those days, the only way to be Krishna conscious in the West was to live inside a temple. Men and women, inside the temple. including in Radha Govinda Mandir on Albert Road. That, if you know the layout of the men and the women in the bathroom situation, and so what was Prabhupada to do? Was he going to deny at least half the human race access to Mahaprabhu's mercy by not allowing women in to the temples? Because that's the only way you could be Krishna conscious in the early days inside the temples, because there was no supportive culture outside. No, he's going to take the risk of doing that. And then Prabhupada told the devotees later, because after those complaints, why are you letting them call you Prabhupada, and why are you letting men and women serve together? He said, for all their complaints, they have not advanced Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission 1 inch. Because they're standing pat on principles. Prabhupada is going to a higher principle. Right? You got to know principles from details, but you also got to know lower principles from higher principles. So he's following Rupa Goswami. Somehow or other, get them to chant Hare Krishna. All the Sarva Vidhi Nishedha Syur, all the rules and regulations of Shastra, Etayor Ilvikinkaraha, should be made servants of this principle. That's what Prabhupada did at 26 Second Avenue. He stressed the do's more than the don'ts. The higher taste more than the taboos. That's Rupa Goswami. So he's actually following, he's a Rupa Nuga. He's following that. But they're standing pat on Dharma, sannyas Dharma. And actually they had a point, there was a principle, Narada Muni's preaching to Yudhisthira in the 7th canto. But still, Prabhupada he's going on a higher principle. He wants people to have access to the mercy of Mahaprabhu. So, is that all right? Okay, ladies, it's the ladies' turn to ask a question. Prabhupada gave us men and women equal access to the mercy of Mahaprabhu. Andy, you got any questions or doubts?
Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda are so beautiful. I don't have any questions.
Yeah. She's been conquered by the beauty. Her doubts have been destroyed by the beauty of Duijan, these two lords. Love that song, right? Okay, gents, any more? Let's see. 9:20. You guys still got 4 minutes. Let me just read the transition to the next lesson. Tomorrow's lesson, we're going to the first lesson of Abhideya, where we're going to deepen our commitment to Prabhupada's mission. Transition. Having deepened our understanding of Srila Prabhupada's relationship with all of us as our founder Acharya, Sambandha, we are now ready to enter the Abhideya phase of our series, how to act on our understanding by deepening our service to his mission. That's tomorrow, and then Friday we'll do one more. There's 4 lessons in Abhideya. We're only going to get a chance to do 2 of those for this trip, but then we'll continue that next time. Yes, Prabhu. Mike, Dr. Mike.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the nice class. I wanted to get some more explanation of the section where Swamiji Prabhupada was asked whether he could be replaced by his god brother. So Prabhupada started to cry.
Mm-hmm.
So I could not understand the links between what he replied very much.
Okay, here, let me. Yeah, that was only he could lead them. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Oh, one more, huh? Yeah, there it is. Prabhupada looking down. He could hardly believe the question. Yeah, and he even refers to Bhaktisiddhanta as no ordinary spiritual master. I mean, that in itself is like mind-blowing. How can a spiritual master be ordinary? He's not ordinary, but still there's different levels of spiritual masters. He usually uses the term regular spiritual master. We should all become regular spiritual masters, not to imitate him, as a founder Acharya. So let's look at the script again. So you couldn't follow the flow of what is it? The connection between what? What did you ask?
Yep. His disciples had the point that if no one wants to lead them, who will lead them? In his absence, who will lead them?
Yes.
So it's supposed to be a valid question.
Yeah. It's, as I said, because they're so needy and so neophyte, they were thinking more of their own, what's going to happen to us if you go to India? Prabhupada's saying, no, I got to go to India to get he was saying, I'm just going to go to get my health back. I need Ayurvedic medicine, massage, India's heat. Because in San Francisco, anybody ever been to San Francisco? It's cold. It's like a perpetual autumn. We have a writer, Mark Twain. He said the coldest winter I ever spent was a summer in San Francisco. Classic Mark Twain wit. So it wasn't happening. You couldn't do it there. So, I got to go back to India, and it worked. He went back. He was gone. He came back in December. He finally left in July, and he came back in December, and he was strong. He was very vigorous. When the devotees picked him up at the airport in San Francisco, he came too, and he was like fired up and robust, So anyway, so let's see. Actually, what happened, there's two accounts of this. There's in Mukunda's Miracle on 2nd Avenue, Mukunda Maharaj's Miracle on 2nd Avenue, and also in Harigriva's Hare Krishna Explosion. So the way Mukunda Maharaj tells it is that Harigriva and Kirtanananda Maharaj forced him. They said, look, Swamiji says he's going to go back to India. He's very frail. He already had a heart attack, in May, and had a stroke. Maybe he's going to pass away there. So, can you just ask him what about us? What are we supposed to do if you die? So Mukunda thought Mukunda was more, cultured, more gentle. He said, no, I don't want to do that. But they forced him. So he reluctantly popped the question. Yeah. And I was accounting. The minute this question is presented to him, we sense that it is offensive. Mukunda already knew it was offensive. It wasn't appropriate, but Swamiji becomes very grave, closing his eyes. Then suddenly we see tears falling down his cheeks because he knows, because of his absolute surrender. Look what he's already been through. Before he even reached America, he had 2 heart attacks. An ordinary person would have just gotten on the next boat, back to India. But he already endured alone, in America. He knows because of his unique absolute surrender to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Lord Chaitanya's mission that he's been uniquely empowered to turn Vrachas and Yavanas into aspiring Vaishnavas. So he knows that his godbrothers they wouldn't help him. How are they going to help his disciples? My Guru Maharaj, she was no ordinary spiritual master, he says, wiping away the tears. He saved me. Very humbly saying, he saved me. Later, Swamiji tells us what we should have always known. There is no one to replace him. The very idea is insulting. And then Prabhupada says, quote, if someone comes and tells you something different, you will be confused. And actually that happened. After Prabhupada left, certain people, leaders, went to one of Prabhupada's godbrothers to ask how do we carry on? And it wasn't the Gaudiya God Brothers' fault, but they asked him, so he gave them the advice, and it gave us the Zodal Acharya era in ISKCON. It gave us this chaotic 1980s. Yeah. So Prabhupada, knew what would happen if the God Brothers were consulted, how to carry on ISKCON. They ruined the Gaudiya Math, right? So, okay, now we're over time. So tomorrow we're going to do, it's called His Mission's Roots. It's more or less following the first volume of Lilamrita, Prabhupada Lilamrita, A Lifetime in Preparation, if you've read that book. It's chronological. It's the early roots of Prabhupada's mission. Jai, thank you for listening. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Sureshwar Prabhu ki jai.
Re Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hari Bol.